Good evening, everyone. Welcome to At America. My name is Hasna, one of the gates here in At America. And for those of you who are new here and have no idea what At America is, well, At America is the U.S. Embassy's American Center, and our mission is to provide a space for young Indonesians to learn about the United States. Today, we welcome all audiences joining us on the final episode of At America Academy, preparing to launch your product. But before we begin, we have a little social media quiz for you. And the question for today is, what are the steps involved in a product launch plan? Is it A, conduct market research and learn about your target market? Is it B, draft a product positioning statement? C, set a go-to market strategy? Or D, all of the above? You may type in your answer at any time during the session on our social media platforms. The lucky one who can guess the answer correctly will get a live shout out from us by the end of this event. And now, without further ado, please welcome our facilitator to begin our session, the co-founder and VP Product Rey.id, Mas Rossi Satyonugroho. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Hasna. Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Today is going to be the last session of this series. So, if we have to have a little flashback, since we started this series about a month ago, we already discussed about what product management is, how to manage stakeholders, how to conduct effective communications and stuff like that. Then we branch out to talk about how to understand what people actually need, planning how to look at your competitors, what to do, talking about go-to-market strategies, and then last week we talked about building MVP, how to evaluate it, how to even say if we're succeeded, and also like, I'm sorry, and also talking about the next steps of it. So today I think we're going to touch upon something that is going to be like your day-to-day as a product manager, like how to see when you have a plan or something in mind, or even an initiative, when you want to make it into a reality, how usually this is going to be implemented. I know that what happens today is something that is very digital product kind of centric, but you can take the approach and the framework and apply it to almost every industry that you're in. So today we're going to talk about Scrum. So basically, Scrum is something that is now, or Agile is being used across industries to kind of improve their efficiency in working, churning a lot of initiative really fast, innovating a lot of things at the same time and things like that. Right now, this framework is usually used like across industries. But back in the day, it was started by the tech companies when they are developing software. They were thinking that like, okay, so usually when you build the solutions, you have three kind of like big frameworks out there. And SDLC stands for Software Development Lifecycle, but this is just example for the session. We will take the learning from each frameworks and how to implement it anywhere you are. So the first one is waterfall. It's more into like if you have a product, you build everything all at the same time with other teams, and then you launch it once all of the building blocks is already there. So, for example, if you want to build a game, you would then like create all the maps and then the functionalities, the character, the skills, and everything from the chapter start until the end. And then you launch it when everything is done. So you have all of the elements already there. Or for example, if you're trying to build services that will enable you to build something, so you would then have all of the components being built, and then it only will be released once everything is completed. If you look at the way software or even like any products right now is being like released into the market, Nowadays, it's very different. They usually have new features coming up. They usually have like some bug fixes, some feature being taken down. Usually, it's in like multiple times a month or even multiple times a year, and it's just not like waiting for that one time when everyone is like, "Oh, this is new." But this approach still very much happens if you look into like the smartphone industry, for example, or the computer industry. So every year, this big developer they usually like have an event, and then they will tell you that like, hey, this is the newest version of our software, of our operating system, of our services, things like that, once a year. So this still happens, but the next one, when we're talking about Scrum, it's more into something that happens like in an iterative process. You add everything little by little. So you start by having an MVP, and then you iterate it and you build it. You build on the MVP until you find a product that like, you know, you find it ideal. And in a lot of cases nowadays, you might not find anything that is quote unquote ideal, because with the Scrum processes, you will find new improvement areas, or if you see something that is happening in the market, you will find another use cases. So your product will keep on growing. If you look at a lot of these startups or like brands in market right now, they usually implement the kind of like the best of both worlds. They usually call it the fountain. So like there are some parts that will come like in small increments, and there are also some parts that's being released in a huge chunk, and then following the waterfall style. If you look into like a lot of the kind of like product out there right now, they follow the thing that like waterfall can provide. What are the because they have their advantages, right? So you can have something that is already stable enough for the market to test, but then you can still add on like some more features or improvements along the way. Okay, so uh, this is like just a framework, and this is not only applies to software development. You can use Scrum in a lot of different settings. So, for example, you're working, put it into your service, then improve how you would build it, how you would construct it as a product and as a package. So you can use pretty much this. But um, you know, uh, there are what we call like a ceremony, the things that's very, I think, near and dear to people practicing Scrum is having these ceremonies happening in daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, or yearly basis, because this kind of like build habits into how you develop your program, or like how you develop your solutions or services. They build a kind of framework on like what you can do every day, how to then break down the big chunks of things that you want to do into something that you can visibly see and um, do. And the behavior in here is like you learn through the experience. So, for example, if you want to build the wedding planning service, you might only like have one thing, right? How to then probably help people choose the venue of their wedding. Then, like from there, you will get a lot more experiences, and then like um, uh, the problems that coming from there, and you learn like, oh, people actually need other thing other than just the building itself. They will need catering services, they will need event organizers, they will need like a lot of other things, souvenirs and everything, right? So doing these processes, you can build like the basic thing that you can ship first, and then from the iterative processes you can find the thing that like can be improved, and you can add on to your services to make it better. uh, the one thing that is also like good from this process is that in here we see what we call backlog. So backlog is more of like a wish list for people. So you already made a plan, you have the kind of thing that you want to build, and then you have a wish list of things. You put it on your product backlog, and then you do a planning. In this planning, they called it sprints. Sprint is like a span of time on like when in that block time, you agreed on certain initiative, and then you are working specifically on that initiative, and you put the priorities on those things that you agreed on when you're doing the planning. And then you kind of do the daily Scrum ceremonies. They usually called stand-ups. So the idea is that you have small groups of people having, about the same objective, and they are working in the same initiative, and then you put them together to the idea of doing stand up is to remove blockers for the day. For example, hey, I have problems in contacting this. I have problems in figuring out which one is the cheapest. So those type of things usually you communicate, and also your plan or like the thing that you need help with. So usually in this meeting, what became very visible is the problem. So transparency always, it's good, and at the same time, it brings the problem right at the front, and then it highlighted it. The good part is that you know what is the problem, and then you can prioritize whether you want to solve the problem now or later based on your experiences, your resources, or probably also your objective, right? So this type of ceremonies will help you to do that. And then one thing that is happening in here is an incremental improvement. So uh, in here, improvement meaning it's not always you are talking about adding new things, but also um, evaluating whether you want to grow it or not. And in the sprint review, or people usually also say that it is a retrospective session where you look back into what you did and evaluate whether it is something that you're happy with, it is something that needs to be improved, and then to the next step, what you want to keep or what you want to like stop doing. So things like this happens on like a very regular basis when you're implementing Scrum. So that way, if you want to remove something or reprioritize your time to do something else, then you can. So this Scrum framework really helps you to take things in smaller chunks, understand what you need to do in short amount of time. You can measure it, you can look into how it goes, and even how to tweak it into delivering the objective that you want to deliver. So another thing that a product manager usually sees is what we call a product requirement documents. So if you're working in tech startups or tech company in general, you will see this. Or like if you're working in a company that is huge enough, they usually refer to a document that contains a lot of information, sometimes in very minute detail about what it is that your team is going to build, going to work on, or agree to do. And then it kind of defines the whole requirement of a certain product. So you can see there from the objective, like why this is happening, and how you approach a problem, the information. Sometimes it requires like some results from the market if you have it. There's the design, the roadmap, the plan, all of the things that we discussed in the previous meetings. They usually compiled it into single documents that everyone can see and refer when they have questions or things that they want to look up. And then a PRD consists of like all of these elements where I know this is like something that sounds really boring, but as a product manager, you usually build this as a form of communicating what is the thing that you wanted to deliver to all of the stakeholders. So the owner of this document might be you, but because it contains a lot of these things, it's usually being a referral for other teams when they have questions or they want to see. Because when you're trying to, for example, launch a new clothing line and you usually only have like short pants, and then you want to have like an outer line that you want to see. So you would use this type of documents to communicate with marketing, with production, with operations, with people on social media, with your finance team and other things to like know what it is that you want to build and how are these going to impact other teams. So it has goals, business objectives, strategic fit, how then it creates a user stories, how you would see the problem from user sides. For example, okay, I want to launch this. So as a user, they wanted to get this in the nearest stores offline, or like as a user I want to be able to purchase this on certain e-commerce. How can then you make it happen? So this type of thing usually happens, and when you're working with this can be something that is really time consuming, but it really helps you in the long run in order to document what are the things that's probably missing that you're also like wanted to add, what other teams has to say about it, their comments and everything. And if you're building digital product, and especially after this pandemic, like a lot of people works remotely, having this type of documents kind of help you when you need to look at something, when you miss something, because not everyone is like very easy to reach, and usually they're already on another meeting with another people. So this is like kind of like the first aid, or like the guide that everyone can easily access. So this is what usually like the structure of the a project looks like when you're using Scrum. You would have something that called initiative. You would have something that's called epic. You would have a user story. You would have a task or subtask. This is like just to be clear on like what are the things that you wanted to achieve, and the smaller breakdown and parts of it, and then you can build into something that's bigger. For example, if you have an initiative to increase the monthly active users to a certain number, then it would be really hard, right? If you don't know what to do. And things like this can then be translated into epics, where epics is like kind of like an overarching theme of something. For example, okay, then I need to create a feature of this that will boost engagement to this. And this feature will consist of this stories or tasks that can be done by the users. And there's going to be a smaller parts of it. So this is kind of like how you would then break down a huge ideas into something that is small, actionable to your teams. Because if you look into problem, the things that you wanted to be solved by another department is going to be very different. You would need design to like do certain things. You would need the help from engineering team to do certain things, for marketing to do certain things, and this type of things is this structure that will easily help everyone understands like how they can then contribute to the bigger initiative that you wanted to do. So this type of thing that we already talk about, uh, we usually also look into the backlog that we were talking about. So it's more like a wish list, but the wish list is not like something that you just like wanted to make or build out of the blue, but it is based on the initiative. It is based on the product requirement documents that you already created before. So then you can list down the things that needs to be done by the team. Uh, so usually, if you're communicating something, you have to see it from the user's point of view, right? Uh, as a user, what they think is something that will solve their problem. So user story is kind of looking at problems from that perspective. Um, for example, as a user, I want to be able to pay my payment, um, for example, for my monthly installment with credit cards, or like with e-wallet, or with bank transfers. Is this something that you see the problems from the user's point of view? And then the second part is what we call a definition of done. So if you need someone for different like functions or different stakeholders to get something done, you would then explain what do you think is a definition of done, so that you don't go back and forth telling people that like, hey, this is not what I meant when I said this. So for example, when there was a story that as a user I want to pay my monthly installment with e-wallet, the definition of done would be user can use their certain e-wallets to pay monthly payment by doing certain things. So this definition should be really clear because then you can test if a task is being delivered the way you define it. So a definition of done is kind of like a consensus between you as the one translating the user needs as a product manager and also the one that is helping you to build the solutions. So things like that usually is being overlooked, but it helps you to minimize misunderstanding, miscommunication, and also like when people are not delivering the thing the way you envision it. And here there were assets. So assets, if you have a visual representation of something, then you can put it there. For example, for that payment page, you already have like design ready for it. So when people working with you building the solutions, they know how it look like, where everything should be put, and how it looks like, and the functionality of it. It will become very, very clear. So for example, like it's the same when you are going to a tailor, you want to build, for example, a dress, then you would have example of like what the dress look like. You then would define like what are certain parts of the dress, and then you would tell them that like this is how I need it to be done, and the assets is like the visual representation of it. You would give them the example. So this is how it looks. So this is how it looks from the front, from the back, from the rear, and other things. So this is like that kind of processes that you have to do when you're a product manager, trying to break down task and implementing it in your day-to-day basis. So as a product manager, if you already like have this structure in your Scrum, the next thing I think is like the thing that uh, already like it looks like you already done all the documentation, but it's not actually done until you communicated it. Because a lot of the time when you're communicating why you need to build this, it will help people helping you understand the importance of it. But then at the same time, when you are explaining it, usually like there's a gap of understanding from people. So you need to have like a constant communication that's probably structured with stand-ups and other things to help them calibrate what they are building, where they are. Is it something that correctly built or correctly made? Those type of check-in and communications kind of help you in catching misalignment or miscommunications also early on. So if you see that like you wanted to build a ship and it doesn't look like the skeleton of a ship, if you have a constant communication and have a structured check-ins with the ones building the ship, you would know that like, oh, this is not the thing that I wanted to build. Can we revisit the documentation and see where we can improve, or where we need to put our effort into making this the thing that we envision together as represented in the assets itself, or like in the visual representation. And another thing that might happen when you already have like stacks of stories and tasks to be done is doing prioritizations. We talked about prioritizations previously and how to do it, but sometimes when you're already doing it on the go, it's not going to be as smooth as you plan. There's going to be blockers. There's going to be like another thing that happens with probably the regulations, or like there's going to be another events that is hindering the progress. So as a product manager, you need to understand where to step in and reprioritize things. So this is an example of what is a product requirement documents. So for example, in here, you want to create a mobile web of a service. So you would have in here the explanation of what are the initiative, what are the epic, the target of the release, and other things such as the document owners, who's responsible of what. So if people needs to communicate with certain people, they know where to go. And also in here, they're understanding like, okay, this is the background. This is the strategic fit. This is the results of the research. So this is a home of like everything that you've already done. Um, and in here, in the stacks of user stories, you can see that people kind of defines it from the perspective of the users in smaller chunks. As a user, I want to sign up via Facebook. As a user, I want to view the latest updates via the mobile dashboard so that they can get a better understanding of what is in place. So you can define it in this way, and you can put a priority in here. When we're doing prioritization yesterday, like there's a rise scoring, and there's like a simpler framework. For example, in here they use must have, should have, and nice to have, things like that. So it is going to be easier for you to put those prioritization in a way that makes sense for your team. And in here, you can even see the like typical questions that people ask. So because sometimes like if you're running a project, people would have questions. Sometimes somebody already asked it, somebody also has the same problems. So having it listed down in your PRD is going to be really helpful. So people don't have to like, trying to figure out on their own. If there's already an answer to it, that would be great. And you can keep it as a live documents that keep on being updated as your your projects or the initiative grows. And one thing that's interesting in here is they put not doing or things that we usually call out of scope. Because when you're delivering a solution, there must be something that you know this is an ideal thing to have, but you decided to not have it or not include it in this version because you want to prioritize on things based on your resources and, for example, timeline that you have. Uh, and another thing that we already kind of like touch upon is doing the planning itself. So, for example, a sprint usually lasted like 1 or 2 weeks. So within that time frame, you would have stacks of user stories that you agreed with your team to complete, and then you would have the time to then plan it. Who's going to work on it? How long would it take? What are the resources that's being needed? And a lot of other things that's going to be kind of correlated to the success of your project delivery. So you're doing it in an event that usually in Scrum we call it a sprint planning. Um, and in here, they usually like having a number representation to understand the magnitude of the task. So if you want to build a dress, for example, if you want to build, you want to put the button, and if you want to have like a certain parts of the dress, of course, the effort of doing those two things can be like two stories. But the effort of putting buttons and making certain parts of the dress can be very different. Some can be okay. This is going to take 1 day, and other like this is going to take 2 or 3 days. Those kind of things is kind of a representation of what a story point is called. So, if you're building a service to help you, for example, pay your meals with your e-wallet, and then the way to create the button to check out and actual effort to pay the invoice is going to be very different. The first one can be something that can be done in a matter of hours. The other one can take days because it costs another services. It requires you to create a document. It requires you to validate the purchase, the payment, and then even telling you if the money comes through or not. So something can be weighed differently, and the way to like you know relatively size this effort is by doing a discussion with your team. Uh, and this is some of the reality of how a Scrum kind of like implementation, especially in digital solutions in Indonesia. So if you're a product manager, usually you are also the one that has to run the sprint or the scrum, because usually they're seeing you as the one who understands the objective through and through, and the one who has been planning it and putting prioritization to the initiative from the start to an end. In Indonesia, especially, usually this role is like one person. Although in larger companies or in larger organizations, usually they have a role called like product owner that they will translate and run the day-to-day operations of the sprints, and you as a product manager will focus on, for example, achieving the metrics, growing the products, doing research initiative, talking to users, and things like that. And as we mentioned about story points on like assessing how big is the effort to build something, usually like we will miscalculate this. Sometimes they overestimate it. Overestimate meaning that it is something that's really hard to build, or sometimes they underestimate it. Oh, this is something that's really easy, but then when they actually do it, though, this is actually really hard. Looking at the complications in our solutions, um, so there's never a perfect way to assign a story points or understanding the magnitude of a task until you actually done it. It is something that is normal to happen, but there are a lot of ways that you can do or try to minimize, the variability of story points estimations. Uh, Sometimes, although we talk about special certain initiative or epics and breaking it down into something that is really small and specific, sometimes it's also like require the team to work on something like not only one thing at a time, but multiple things, because you have shortage of talents, you have limited resources, you have a time-bound projects that needs to be done like in a timely manner, and you don't have time, and things like that happens. So um, this is the reality of when you're running a project. The resources that's helping you is probably also on something else. So this is, kind of like a stakeholder management thing that we touched upon on our first meeting that you need to do to understand how it is going to impact your planning and how it is going to kind of like impact the not only your planning but the goals that you wanted to achieve. Do you have to communicate to other stakeholders? That's going to be a delay, or if you cannot delay it, how can you get more resources? So things like this tend to happen when you're running a project. Um, when we're talking about building a product requirement documents, a lot of the time people kind of see like, oh, this is a very tedious thing to do, but not documenting enough is going to be a disaster for you moving on. So for example, if you don't have a complete documentation and you want to improve or build on another solutions on top of a solutions that already exists, the presence of a good documentation is very vital. It can be very uh, bad for your team if you don't have it, because you might build something that's going to break the previous thing, or you might build something that led to more complications moving forward and things like this. So having a good documentation is something that we often overlook, because it's a lot of work, a lot of time of sitting down, writing, documenting. It is the thing that is the first thing that you need to do as a product manager to make sure that like your documentation is updated, the information that is being put there can be trusted, and it is the source of truth that everyone can look into when they need to understand something or need a solution. I'm not saying that it needs to be like the holy grail or a silver bullet for all of the solutions. If you have questions, but it is going to be something that when people look at it, they can get answers from it. Uh, and there's also something that we usually see as a cultural barrier, especially when we live in Indonesia right now. Indonesia consists of people from a lot of different ethnicities and cultural background. And in Indonesia, another island, and even in Java, there's a lot of other mix of cultures and ethnicities, where it usually brings differences to the way of how people work, how people see problems, how people approach solutions. And sometimes the differences in this communication style can be a roadblock that needs to be solved. Or even like someone that you're previously working in a certain organization or industry, and then you move to another industry, they usually have different ways of looking at problems. For example, I was a trained pharmacist. So I really was putting my patients' safety and life like at the forefront of whatever that I am doing. And when I moved to another industry, the way they see problems and the way they kind of assign, sense of urgency is very different with the way I was brought up and taught. So a lot of effort was made in order for me to understand how things work and how to better communicate with the team. So the communication skill that we already discussed is something that seems really small, but it can like bring you um, a lot of benefits when you are in the work. Um, Things that we can do is I'm not saying that over communicating uh, is good, but it's like doing over communication with manner is always better than not communicating at all. So make sure you have your teams in check. Make sure that you make time to contact everyone, to have a lot of your initiative or objective aligned and things like that. And also doing a mix and match of Scrum and other solutions in that or frameworks that's available out there. Because Scrum may be good, but if it doesn't fit your organization or working style, you're not going to get any advantage from it. So you need to try if something is not working and mix and match. So for example, I don't have the time to do like daily stand up. I will change it into something else. I will do it like every 2 days, or like a lot of other things that you can explore in order to find a balance of what is working for your team. And one thing that's very important is getting people to see the problem from the same perspective and understanding that like the objective is the same, by also taking into account what everyone feels and what everyone kind of thinks about it. Another thing that is usually being a problem is that as a product manager, you're seeing the problem only from your side. You're not seeing from other side, and it is very damaging to the team because every team they have their own like perspective. They have their own objective, and the experiences and the touch point is very different. So usually, understanding this and treating people as people when you're working in a team is going to be the thing that will be the make or break for the team. You can have like a lot of people from different expertise that's the best in their field, but if you don't have the same perspective and you don't treat them as a person, it can be something that is going to break your team. So this is the last part, but it's very important when you want to create success from your team. And Scrum looks like something that's really huge, and like everyone uses it. If you talk to like everyone working in tech industry, they will tell you that like I have to do daily stand up. I just have my sprints. I have my retrospective session and things like that. And it seems like everyone is using that, but Scrum cannot just work on their own. They need other frameworks and other functions or other solutions to make it work. The component under it is a lot, and we already explore a lot of frameworks and solutions to deliver things, and we can definitely incorporate those in our Scrum practices to make it better, to help us achieve the goals. Another thing when when we were talking about launching the product is also understanding the stage of growth of a product so that we can then understand. Right now, we're probably still touching upon like what's the go-to-market strategy? Who's our competitors? How are we going to do it? How are we going to respond to competition and things like that? But another thing that we need to do, we need to understand like how usually product life cycle looks like to understand where we are and what we need to do about it. Um, we use a lot of 2x2 metrics like this. And this is like about managing the executives and also like other team members. We can see that there's like a power and interest dimension of it. And we can see that like, for example, in here, you can make different parts of your stakeholders and also like your users and other parts that you're working with into this matrix, and then you can use it to help how you should treat them moving forward, how to collaborate with them, and how to um, best use your relationship with you to achieve the objective that you need to deliver from your day-to-day task. So, for example, if there's like people, who has a lot of power and influence, and they have a lot of interest in your work, these players, like you need to manage them really closely, and you need to, um, you know, uh, kind of deliver the thing that you need to deliver to them. But if they have a lot of interest, but they don't have a lot of influence on you, you probably want to spend not a lot of your time just because like you have very limited time, right? You just want to keep them informed. And this thing about managing executive and others is very important because as a product manager, we already talk about having a lot of meetings and having a lot of stakeholders that you need to manage, and setting the context for them, putting them in like different boxes and understanding how you should interact and treat them is going to be the thing that will make your day easier because you only have so much time, but you have a lot of stakeholders that you need to manage. So this is about the product life cycle. The first one is about introducing your product. This is going to be the first thing as a product manager that you will see when you're building, from example, a product from 0 to 1 or like a new solutions. You will see that like this is going to be just the MVP, just the first iteration. You need to do more iterations, understanding how it plays out. You will not get a lot of sales from it. You will see a lot of problems arises from the operations, and you are still going to build awareness for the users. This is like the thing that like, for example, on your like first 6 months, it is going to be the thing that you see. You will see more of like a steady, slow increase, but you're not gonna see something that's like it's growing 10 times, growing 20 times. You will see that you will slowly grow and you will learn a lot from here. So focusing on doing iterative processes on your MVP, improving your products, and also like building a narrative, talking about brandings, yeah, letting people know about who you are, what you're going to do, and how why are you different from the rest of the group, and things like that is going to be happening here. Although it's going to be like happening across the process, but this is going to be the most critical part for you. The next one is about growing then the customer base. You already educate people about who you are, what you're doing, and things like that. You already learn from the mistakes. You already improve your MVP. You already have something that you already prove something uh, that solves the problem, and people actually likes it. You will see that like your customer base will be growing very rapidly from here in very short amount of time, and the effect of like word of mouth, and another marketing that you invested early on. Usually, you can see here that your customer acquisition cost is going to be lowered, and you will get higher return from your ads or like your marketing investment in here. So you can see that like in here, the business is doing really well. So um, we are talking in a scenario of like how usually things plays out, and if you're talking about startups, there's a lot of initiative that don't see the light of day, or like they only been there for like just a second, not very long time, because getting through the first phase of introduction is really hard. And when you're into growth phase, it is something that usually needs like you know, we usually call it, it's not only like executing power at this point, it's going to talk about your endurance, how you are dealing with problems. Can you run faster? Do you have enough capital to then raise this? For example, if you are bootstrapping, we talk about not all startups have like venture capital or investors. Usually some people started their business with their own money. Then in here you will see a lot of problem about scaling up the solutions. Do you have enough capital? Do people have enough demand for you to grow into this big? And if you can power through this, you can definitely go into the growth phase. And after this is something that, you know, you still see your products growing, but not that rapidly. When it hits maturity, you kind of already see that like you will gain a lot of profits. There's a steady raise of users, but there's not a lot of new things that is happening in the market for your business. And you can see, because you're already successful, a lot of people will try to copy your solutions. There's going to be like competitors. There's going to be a lot of new things that's being introduced. So you can see when you are at that point. So for example, when you started, there's only like 2, 3 competitors and or people doing about the same thing. And when you hit maturity, usually there's a lot of competitors in the market trying to copy what you're doing. So if you see that, you can see that like, oh, the business model is working. A lot of people are trying this and things like that. Uh, and the next one is talking about the decline. If we're looking at this, usually everything just like went down. If we're talking about industries like games, the customer lifecycle from introduction to decline, it's usually really fast, because like with games, when it's new, people are interested in it, and like it's the interest in it spiked, and then it will drop when like another new thing is in the market, or like um, you have like a very steady users, but you cannot innovate, and there's new technology out there and new ways of like doing the games and things like that. So usually the for games this is shorter. For e-commerce, it could take years. For games, it took usually like couple years until less than a decade. So if you look into like the trend of games, usually it changes like every 2, 3 years. But with e-commerce, usually the solutions stays longer, because back in the day there were no like online shopping, and then there's some way of people getting products online, and right now we can see it. So it takes some time from the e-commerce to mature, and especially if we're talking about solutions in the health space. Usually, it's even longer than that. You can see that like some ways of getting treatments and the way people are getting certain drugs for like decades is not changing. So if we're looking at this kind of a life cycle from introduction to decline, in each industry, in each type of work, usually it's very different. There's a lot of kind of sources that you can read in understanding certain types of industry. For example, uh, the easiest one is using Google, right? And just type in the type of industry and their life cycle, you will get a lot. You can see a lot of consulting, making yearly reports for certain industries. It can also help you to get a sense of like how every industry is growing, because understanding this is very important. We can see at this type of products. Uh, I know, and I'm very old. So when I was a kid, Kodak, Fujifilm, they were really big. Everyone kind of very excited with the technology. You can take pictures, you can print them, and everything. But if you're looking into what happens right now, uh, some of them are gone. Blockbuster, they're not there anymore. But they were really huge back in the day. Kodak right now is changing their whole business line into making skincare. So there's a lot of things that is changing in the industry because you know if you see everything is like on their maturity and they're not doing any improvements or changing the way they're doing their business or delivering solutions, it will definitely disappear. I remember when I was like a kid, everyone was on Friendster. It was like the thing. I thought it was the peak. This is the coolest thing that's ever happened to the internet back in the day. But right now, it's not even here. The way you use social media is very different. Smartphone changes everything. The camera technology changes everything. So with the changes in the technology, in the market, in the competition, usually it will change the way people do things, and that's why they call it a disruption, right? Something that's already very mature, and then somebody enters the market introducing new things. It disrupts the status quo of the thing that's already matured as a solution in that time. And I believe that like right now, no one uses BlackBerry anymore. Um, the company is still there. Research in Motion is still there, but I think they're doing a very different thing in engineering with what we thought BlackBerry could be back in the day. Uh, and also like a Walkman, like uh, it was the coolest thing when I was in junior high school. But right now, everyone already like have their phones. No one uses Walkman anymore. So this is like a thing that I can discuss with you guys about how to survive. But in reality, to survive is not something that is really easy to do, because understanding when you're hitting maturity and how to innovate from there is something that's not really easy. But a practice of constantly doing Scrum, looking at competitors, and keep on the iteration of your solutions from time to time can help you to understand that, like, whether your solution is already saturated and you need to innovate to new solutions, or if there's still a space for you to grow in that direction. Usually, a lot of the solutions that make it, or like the company that still makes it, um, are still alive until today. They adapt to changes by understanding when they hit maturity, they need to re-innovate and extension the curve by understanding what's new in the market and doing changes to it. So if you see like Blockbuster, they're not here yet. They're not here anymore. But Netflix is here right now. A lot of streaming services now is changing uh, the businesses of Blockbuster or any compact disc or DVD rentals that was like everywhere back in the day with online streaming services, because right now like everyone watch everything from their phone, right? And when I see Friendster, it was the coolest thing. But right now with the changes in technology, it changes. Like now there's Meta, and Meta is not only Facebook. They started with Facebook, and now they branch out to a lot of other things. They do acquisition to the newest thing. They change the way things are going, and they have a lot of new solutions. Even like if we're looking into it right now, they have like metaverse, they have the Web3 solutions, and a lot of other things that, right now we might not think that it is something that is interesting, but in the years coming, with the changes in technology, it can be something that can be the new norm for everyone. So I guess that's for today. We can take questions and discuss about the things related to the topics today. Okay, I will take questions first from Facebook, from Marita, asking about how do you know if your product is successful and delivers high value? When we're talking about uh, how we plan and how we measure success previously, we talk about setting up goals. Goals meaning that, like, you understand how the market works, how big is the market, what can you do, then setting up a certain number or certain sets of initiative that is going to be the base of what you call success, so that when you are evaluating your solutions and initiative, you can say that, like, for example, success is something that in this context, something that is easily measurable and quantifiable. You will look at numbers that will reflect your activities in a valuable way. For example, if you care enough about revenue, then you can probably set it as your goal. But if you're a services that really don't take revenue as something that you would put in your success categories, for example, if you're an app like Peduli Lindungi, we talk about this a couple times, you would not put revenue there. You probably put like daily active users, daily users that is probably like actively doing scans, check in, check out, and things like that as your success metrics, right? And how do you know if you deliver high value? Value is something that's very relative to the user group that you're servicing. So the key things that you need to do is to get in touch with your user, getting their feedback, and understanding if that is something that you would then, uh, you know, understand from their point of view as something that is valuable. For example, if you are delivering solutions to have on-demand ambulance, then you would talk to the users. What is important for you um, from the services? It would look very different if you're talking about uh, having a service that delivers fresh produce. So value is something that is very contextually different from one user group to the other because their objective is usually very different. And in order for you to understand that, doing a user experience research and understanding your user and also putting a metrics and evaluating the user experience in general by asking their satisfaction is going to be something that you can do to measure whether it delivers a high value or not for your users. And just in general, if your target user finds you very valuable, you can then see growth and tractions in your platform. You will see the number of people doing purchases, for example, going up. People do frequent transactions. People have larger basket size and things like that. You can see growing in your platform if your target user thinks that you're valuable enough. The next question from Instagram is from Nita. Nita Galuh asked, bagaimana cara kita bisa dapetin user story sebelum kita launch the product? So previously we talked about understanding your users. And the first step to it is you can do a desk research. You can then do a qualitative research by doing an interview to your user to understand the journey from their point of view. And then you can derive the user story from that point of view. So you can role play when, okay, so for example, your user is named Anita. Anita is a girl, 17 years old, about to graduate high school, and she needs to find online tutoring services to help her improve certain, understanding in certain school subjects. So you would then look from her perspective after doing a research to then understand what are the things that she mentioned or she signals as something that is important to construct the user stories. We got a hi from Mario from Labuan Bajo. Thank you. Hi, Mario. Mariposa, I'm sorry. Mariposa Bumi from Labuan Bajo. Hi. We got a question from Jeremy in Instagram. Bagaimana pendapat Anda mengenai the social media TikTok? Could we say they have good steps of Scrum? Um, uh, I think the way we look at Scrum is more into proses yang kejadiannya di internal perusahaannya. They might not use Scrum. Probably they're using something else. But apa yang bisa kita lihat di sana, innovations is something that is really visual for TikTok. Kayak kita bisa lihat banget gimana cara mereka ngedisting diri mereka dari sosial media lain. Terus kita juga bisa ngelihat perubahan dari fitur, penambahan fitur, dan bagaimana mereka tuh keep on improving. Kita bisa ngelihat apa yang mereka lakukan di iterasi mereka dan improvement mereka itu working well. Tapi kalau ditanyain kayak, could we say they have good steps of Scrum? They probably don't use Scrum as Scrum is only a framework. They probably use something else or use a mix of Scrum and other things. But what we can see is that they're doing an iterative process to improve their platform so that they can have a good user experience, and you can see the growth in their user base and everything based on just a mere observation to understand that they're building something that is better or not. So I guess it is very different to say that something is successful and measuring what type of framework that they're using and the implementation of it in their day-to-day. Fazi Muhammad from Instagram asks, do you think Fibonacci is an effective way or do you have another way? So, okay, let me go back to this. So, when we are using Fibonacci numbers, as a starting point, it won't hurt. So, for examples, like you, it's not something that uh, is really ideal and have no fault, but it's easier to start that way. So in a sense that like for me it has been working really well, but I don't know if there's like other way to do it because so for example that like if you're probably working in smaller groups and also in very large group, probably using Fibonacci is not the best thing to do because the complications and the the depth of the work, also like the people working with you is going to be very different. You probably can use something that's a lot simpler than this. As in instead of using like point scale like 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 11, you can probably just say that like it's very easy, moderate, hard, very hard. You can use that, or like you can use another way of assigning things. So, for example, if you're working in a large group that involves a lot of team members with different specialties, you might already like using something more complex than a Fibonacci to kind of assign story points. So this is something that it's not always like the best thing that I'm telling you right now, but it is like something that's really easy that everyone can start, and it's generally being used. But it's really not the thing that's going to be the silver bullet for everything. And Nastia from Instagram asked about how to do good pitching as a PM. Okay, so in order for you to do a good pitching, we mentioned previously about creating a story, talking about communication with data. So the first thing that you can do is talking about the context of the problem first, because I think this is not specifically for product management, But I learned this when I learned about advocacy back in school. Like usually in public narrative, you're talking about three things. First is a story of me, story of us, and the story of now. So the story of me is going to tell a story of like why this thing matters to me. Me meaning you as a product manager. You can use informations about market. You can use the data about the market, your metrics performance from the thing that you have been doing, your platform, your solutions, and a lot of other things about you. And then you will tell a story of us. Story of us meaning that you are talking about it from the perspective of you as the one presenting the problem and asking buy-in from other people with the audience. So you will talk about story of us in a way that like why you should care about this. So the story of us also kind of hooks the audience into like this is something that can also impacts you. If you're talking about the team, you can talk about the whole, for example, group performance or the company performance, or in an initiative level, what would happen to the audience if this is not being delivered because you already tell it from your point of view with enough data and stories. So then the last thing is the story of now. Why you should do it now? Why you should not do it like 2 years from now? Why you didn't do it like last week? So why you need to get it done now? So understanding that there is a time element to whatever problem that you're trying to solve is going to help people to put perspective on when we're talking about prioritization. There's a sense of urgency about now. Like why do you have to like do it now? Why not yesterday? What kind of benefit can you get? What kind of thing that will be disastrous if you're not doing it right now? And for example, um, I watched this K drama called Startup back in the day. They did a pretty good job in 3 minutes of telling that stories. And the story of now is one of the key hook and important thing because like yes, I know this is a very convincing one and this is going to impact everyone, but if people in the audience and like you included and doesn't understand the magnitude of the urgency why it needs to happen now, then people would then like, okay, let's focus on other things. Let's not do this. This also like not only about you getting your job done, but also collectively as a group and initiative, what can then be in a disadvantage if you're not doing it now. So those three things: story of me, story of us, and story of now. So this is the framework that I usually use to create a good pitch. It doesn't matter when you only have 1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. If you can put these elements into your pitch, it's going to create a good, concise, and also coherent stories for you to pitch to whatever it is your audience is. And I think this is, as a PM, I cannot convince this enough to a lot of PM that like you don't always get all of your solutions by looking at product management frameworks and other tech related solutions out there. You can borrow inspirations from a lot of other places. For me, it was like political science reading that I did, and it's about advocacy, talking about how public narrative works. And it actually have been working well for me personally in creating a pitch in those structures. And you can probably find it from like reading fiction books or books about psychology and other things, because I know that a lot of behavioral economists and sciences is out there to help us to understand better how people think and human behavior in general, in order for us to create a very effective way in narrating the story. Okay, is there any more questions? Okay. If there's no questions, I think I give it back to the e-guides. Thank you.
Thank you very much to our facilitator, Mas Rossi, for facilitating this insightful series of at America Academy. Hope everyone learned something new and found it valuable as well. So earlier in this event, we asked the audience a question, if you remember, and the question was, what are the steps involved in a product launch plan? And the correct answer to that is D, all of the above. Shout out to today's lucky one at Nia Faridatul from Instagram for answering correctly. And thank you so much, everyone, for participating in our question of the day. Don't forget to tune in next time and catch a chance to get a live shout out from us. And now, do you want to develop more brilliant ideas with a platform like this? It's easy as ABC. You can simply go to our website at www.atmerica.or.id, select create an event, and go to collaborate with us. All given proposals will be reviewed and your event might be featured here soon. You can also subscribe to our upcoming events to find weekly updates from us with at America Academy and more of it. Also, follow us on our Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at AT America for interesting contents, giveaways, and so much more. Also, click the like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel. With that, it is time to say farewell. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. My name is Hasna. See you on the next at America event. Bye bye, everybody.